This happened while my wife and I were renting at a manufactured home community in 2022. We were only there for a year through the end of our lease when we moved out due to issues with the landlord, which I'll get into in a moment. For some context, the manufactured home had a heating system that operates using propane gas, which we were responsible for paying at the time. Issues with our heating system not running regularly were noticed early in January 2022. The heating would come on, but acted differently. We contacted our propane supplier to make sure the amount of gas that we had in our tanks was good, and it wouldn't affect the way the heating system works. My wife reached out one bitter cold Friday afternoon to the on-site community manager, Nancy. We tried to advise her that we were having issues with the heating system. Nancy immediately began scolding my wife for having called late in the day to report this and stated that she had let all her maintenance men go home early today. This was between 2:45 to 3 p.m., and the office is open until 5 p.m. My wife apologized, and Nancy said, "You should be sorry." Nancy did then apologize to my wife after calling back after speaking to maintenance, saying she was having a bad day. Nancy sent the maintenance man out, Ron, who had the furnace running, but then he left as soon as it started running. We noticed it was doing the same thing, so my wife then had to reach back out to Nancy right away, and Ron then returned. The first time Ron was there, my wife asked him not to judge the way our place looked with the boxes and bags that we didn't get a chance to finish putting away. He didn't respond. In the meantime, while he was at our place, Nancy called my wife and began yelling at her about the way our place looked with boxes and bags throughout the home that we had 5 months before her injury to straighten up. She said she saw a video of our place taken while maintenance was there. Nancy told her we would be evicted within 30 days if the place was not cleared up by Monday, as so she would be coming to inspect it. However, she threw out 3 different days, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, then back to Monday. She also demanded that I get outside to shovel since it was not done yet, and since I was home to answer the door for Ron. My wife told her I was working, but she didn't get to say that I am working from home. Please note that I was teleworking at the time due to COVID-19 pandemic. I did go out and shovel after my shift after Ron left. Maintenance had left us with space heaters and said that they will be there Monday morning to fix the issue with the heating. My wife asked Nancy if Ron could come through the back door since it is right next to the heating system, so they wouldn't have to trample snow and liquid all over the floor, especially with her being on crutches. She snapped at her, saying he will be coming to the front door. This second conversation on had my wife in tears on the phone, and this was while Ron had been there. Ron needed to check in the office if the correct part needed was available, but it wasn't, and he would need to pick it up on Monday. He did return with 3 space heaters from the office to loan until Monday, and said that he usually suggests to other residents about having them. He did say he would check back on Saturday morning with us, and he did around 10 a.m. We were doing okay. This is some extra information since it was brought up in a recent conversation with Nancy. The first night we moved in, we found bugs that had us concerned and appalled. They were coming out from the kitchen counter and cabinet area and only saw them very late at night. We didn't even bring any food boxes here yet, nor anything that would have created or attracted them. My wife and I were very worried and disgusted since we never had that problem before. Maintenance had then left a trap for them, but she was concerned it wasn't enough since we were still seeing them and was told that it just attracts them more. We were aware from Nancy that the last tenants were not here long. We often would hear stories from her about other tenants. Anyway, the pest issue was brought to Nancy's attention the following day in person, and since we just moved in, she had an exterminator come up at their expense, whereas usually they said it's up to the tenant to pay for this sort of thing. So my wife was hesitant on putting anything in the cabinets because of it just getting treated, and wanted to make sure she wouldn't see anymore, and has always been careful with any food or garbage. When my wife had mentioned to Nancy on the phone when speaking to her on Friday, that delayed things a little with her putting things in cabinets. At the time, she blamed us for bringing the bugs when we knew we did not. It seemed like this was being thrown back in our faces, which wasn't right or fair. There was also something unsettling about Nancy's look when she told us about the bugs before we left her office that day. If we were used to living with bugs, why would we even say anything? Anyway, Nancy also told my wife our lease would not be renewed at the same time they were talking eviction. We wanted to mention this for the record since it's what we found out after moving in. On the second day, we had an appointment for Verizon and DirecTV to set up our services. When they were here, we found out that one out of the 2 phone jacks were inoperable, and one of the TV hookups were also inoperable. The man from Verizon had told us that he thought it was someone from a TV company that had cut the wires. This has caused so much inconvenience with where they put our phone and our second TV, but the utility people had helped as much as they could. The man from Verizon had said he knew Nancy and he would talk to her about it. We had also mentioned this to Nancy ourselves when we saw her in person regarding the bugs. We also talked to Nancy about the Verizon and DirecTV coming to our home the day after moving and telling us the lines were cut. There really wasn't any response and nothing that was done that we know of. We only had one area in the home where we could use the landline phone. Thankfully, it is a multi-phone cordless. We did not complain any further since we were getting by with what we had and didn't want to go through more trouble. Also, our bedroom rug was stained pretty good in a certain area the second day we lived here due to DirecTV and Verizon having to come in and out of the mud and the rain that day. We planned on trying to get the rug shampooed in October when the weather would be better for it to dry up, and that's when my wife had her injury and everything came to a halt. My wife received a voicemail message from Nancy on Saturday morning, asking that I call her that day. She said Ron and her talked last night and this had her upset. They think it is a hoarding issue and will be bringing a code enforcement officer out. She said she will be calling him on Monday to see what his schedule is and will be giving you people today and tomorrow. She further said she wants everything cleaned up. Bags, boxes, everything, and the house better be spotless and look like we are living there, not like we are storing stuff here. She said it is not a storage unit. She said she will be there with the code enforcement officer. Nancy then said that we will be responsible for Ron's overtime with the furnace, and it was definitely because we let it go for too long. And Nancy said she could tell me that Ron would be coming by later today. She wants both decks shoveled off and a path to the propane tanks, driveway, and sidewalks. She did say again about having me call her. Nancy also said that her and Ron would be back through on Monday, so she could check the furnace, and if the place was not cleaned up within these 48 hours, that she would be filing at court and an eviction on her record. She is guessing that this is why we were forced to leave the other place, which was not the case. Nancy further said how she was so disappointed and never thought in a million years that 2 lovely people like ourselves would live like that. She is so appalled, she doesn't know what to do. She went on to say that the people next to us, who are friends of hers, that you could eat off their floors and the homes are identical years. She then reiterated that Ron would be by later today, and I better have everything shoveled off like she said. And her and Ron would be there Monday afternoon. She will then be calling code enforcement and bringing him through Tuesday or Wednesday. Nancy stressed again that every box, every bag better be cleaned up and the home better look like we were living there, furniture and TV placed. She doesn't know what else to tell us, and that's how it is. The voicemail is available to forward if needed. Please note that this was all said by Nancy before actually seeing our residence. We were told at the time of signing the lease that inspections are provided with a 7-day notice, and Nancy had also told my wife due to COVID they were not doing inspections. Having people constantly in our place with the rising COVID cases were putting us at greater risk. At around 12:30 p.m. on Monday, Nancy knocked hard at the door and showed up with Ron and another maintenance person, Dave. I greeted them by saying hi, but received no response. Nancy immediately started looking around and saying, "Oh my God," several times, and this was the worst she'd seen. Nancy had also been taking photos. She talked about us being out within 30 days. We thought we could have a rational conversation with Nancy and work towards a mutual agreement since this issue was the first time being brought up to our attention and asking for a reasonable opportunity to fix it. She kept saying no and was not listening. She again brought up about the bugs that she said we brought here, asking if we enjoy living this way, and blaming my wife again for waiting before calling about the heating issue. My wife and I both have multiple health issues. In addition, my wife sustained a tibial plateau fracture in her left leg in October 2021 and had been on crutches until about mid-March. She needed physical therapy and was trying to receive that at home while waiting to hear from our insurance. She was also in the process of applying for a disability. She has needed much of my help and care, and we were barely getting any sleep. And at the same time, my wife would need things to be out and easy to reach for her, to use and get out so that she would make the place seem messier. She was unable to get into the shower and had to take baths using wipes. I had to take FMLA from my job for almost a month to help take care of her. She still had so much added limitation due to her injury. Before her injury, she had a hard time getting around the way it is due to her physical disability. Nancy said how she was nervous about the fire in NYC over the weekend due to space heaters, and we could not keep them in the home after Tuesday. There's nothing we can find in a lease stating that space heaters are not allowed. If not, then all residents need to be told they cannot have them, and we should not have been singled out. And the maintenance men should also not be telling residents they could have them. Please note that while I did shovel the night before, the path to the propane tanks was the only area not shoveled yet. I did do this on Saturday, which was within the 36-hour rule, and I only saw other residents had shoveled their decks, sidewalks, and driveways. Ron came that morning, but not later in the day like Nancy said he would. There didn't seem to be any reason for him to return again that day, as we were provided with adequate heat from the space heaters at the time. There is a sign posted near the mailbox about how tenants could be evicted for not shoveling in time. This is not in the lease, however. If there were any questions about our previous rental place, this was not addressed by Nancy with us until now. She still agreed to rent to us, and she did have all the prior information. We have never been evicted before, and lived in our previous residence for 6 years. We learned from Nancy that when we first applied that there was someone else in mind, but they failed a background check, so we were next in line, the second choice. I was not able to return Nancy's call on Saturday, and knew that it would just likely lead to more arguing if I did speak with her. From what I understood, she just wanted to know my work schedule. My wife could have given this to her without my need to call. She could have called me herself too. I also did not appreciate the way she spoke to my wife. We are human beings, not pieces of garbage. We paid the rent on time each month. We would only call when needed, and had not been problem tenants during our time there. At no time since moving there had we been given any notice about our place needing to be cleaned up until now. Sunday turned out to be an ice storm, and there were freezing temperatures all weekend. It was hard to meet the short time frame and unrealistic expectations given to us verbally. It would still have been difficult for us, as we had the help of a moving company when we came here, along with my wife's physical disabilities and recent injury on top of that. I helped my wife with a lot, but I am only one person. I emailed Nancy on Sunday apologizing for not getting back to her on Saturday. She replied back on Monday, stating that her and Ron would be there that afternoon. No time was specified. I replied back asking what time, and she said 12:30 p.m., which was only about a half hour beforehand, and she asked if the place was cleaned up. I had no time to respond. I needed to let my wife know, who was still resting in bed, as it normally takes her a while to get ready due to physical limitations. We would have appreciated more advance notice of them coming, but I guess we didn't deserve to have any type of courtesy. I had still been working and do not check my personal email constantly throughout the day. I'm not sure why Nancy asked for my work schedule. I thought given the hours she would have worked around my schedule. I have a defined schedule with 2 15-minute breaks and 30-minute lunch break. Ron and Dave could not fix the issue when they came Monday, and said they would need to call in an electrician who would be coming Tuesday. Nancy said if he would not fix the heating system, that we would need to go to a motel at our expense or stay with my mom. The water would be shut off. Meanwhile, we still pay for rent, propane, electric, landline, and internet. My wife was trying to say across the house as they were walking out the door with our masks on. So does that mean the house is garbage and should be thrown away because they can't fix the furnace and then we have to leave immediately? She meant it as it doesn't make sense for us to have to get out because they have to fix a furnace and threaten to turn off the water. Nancy told my wife she has a problem. Please note that my mom is down as an emergency contact. So is my mother-in-law. To stay at my mom's home would not have been a feasible option, especially on such short notice. And staying at a motel would not have worked either. It should be noted that emergency contacts should not be expected to be relied upon for housing. Before leaving, Nancy said we would receive a letter by the end of the day about eviction. We did receive an email, which stated that the repair person would be coming on Tuesday between 10:30 to 11 a.m. to hopefully repair the furnace. Another inspection will be following Tuesday at 1 p.m. with code enforcement, and if not in an acceptable condition, we will be given until March 1st to vacate the home. And if the furnace could not be repaired, we would need to move out immediately. How nice. We were still paying a full month's rent and our utilities, though we would need to find somewhere to stay in the dead of winter at our own expenses while my wife tries getting around on crutches. It was already hard for her to get around prior to her injury, but who cares about that, right? The only time she was out since her injury was for medical appointments. Nancy came by after 5 p.m. to the home on Monday, and I met her at the front door where she personally handed me the email that she had already sent. She then reiterated a lot of information already sent in the email and said she guesses this was the reason we had to leave the last place. Nancy also said that she will not tolerate the way we were living. She told me she made some phone calls that afternoon. Should this not have been done before we moved there? And what business would she have calling our previous landlord now? I told her we were not evicted. She said her regional manager Kyle was appalled by the photos. Nancy told me that my wife had issues. I told her I didn't appreciate her saying this, and that she needs to watch the way she speaks to people. I asked her if she would like to tell my wife this herself, and she declined. My wife heard the whole conversation from the bedroom anyway. Nancy said my wife had made accusations about her. We did not know what she was referring to. I also did not care, as I know everything that went on and stand by my wife. I learned about moving to this community that Nancy had a reputation of being a two-faced and evicts people within a short amount of time. This information could have been found on Facebook. We did not want to believe such statements, but obviously the posts on social media about Nancy and this company proved to be correct over time. We were grateful for the chance to be able to rent here from the start, since finding a rental that would meet our needs was difficult at the time. We needed a place with everything on the first floor. Nancy allowed us some time in the place before signing a lease and paying rent. She even gave us the contact information for the business who cuts her grass, which we then hired. If we only knew what we later learned, we would never have gone there. From what we know, Nancy has only been to our place this once since we started renting here in late April 2021. We asked if she would be walking around with us to show us the home and things like that, and she said no. Did not show us the home before we signed the lease, and we were given a key to see it ourselves beforehand, which seemed odd. Other places we rented, someone would walk around with us and show us things initially. My wife and I are good people. We never stopped being the lovely people Nancy met. We have clean records and do not look for trouble. We do not think it was fair for our character to be defamed, and to be made out to be someone we are not. We are referred to as hoarders by Nancy. She barely even knew us. We admit that the place did not look normal, and we were doing what we could to improve this matter. We were not enjoying anything about this. Quite frankly, we were very embarrassed. We had plans in place to get our boxes and bags cleaned up by the fall, but we had some setbacks. Shortly after moving in, my wife applied for disability, and we became victims of identity fraud, which took some time to work through. It was also an unusually warm summer to be bringing items back and forth to a storage unit, but I suppose these are looked at as invalid excuses. What excuse is there, however, for the way we were treated and spoken to? I'm sure we were not the only ones who have had any hardships in our lives, but I guess if you do, then you can't live in this community. At least this is the way we were made to feel, like we didn't deserve to be there. I guess that meant we didn't deserve to have any heat either. We thought the point of Nancy coming and looking at our place would be to have a rational discussion, not to be scorned, especially without having a working heating system. She offered no resources or remedies that would possibly assist us with cleaning our place up, although I know of other tenants she had helped when they were in a jam. Items are more out of place because of my wife being on crutches and needing easy access to reach and get our things as best as could without having to ask for assistance each time. We don't understand where all the hatred was coming from. We felt judged, labeled, harassed, threatened, insulted, demeaned, and gaslighted to the point of this being one of the most traumatic experiences we have needed to deal with, living in constant fear. We were always respectful towards Nancy whenever we needed to contact her, which wasn't often, and we never thought badly of her until all of this happened. If I would pass by the office while taking a walk and see her, I would wave or say hi. We did not feel we were giving her an attitude, even as she was tearing us apart in front of her staff. Nancy acted very unprofessional, subjective, and I find it hard to believe that this company condones her behavior. If so, then that is a major problem. But I guess they must condone it. because we never even got an apology for what we had gone through. Gee, thanks, we deserved all of this. We have never been spoken to that way before by anyone. This company, according to social media, had a bad reputation. Again, we wish we had more time to research things before we agreed to come here. We were being compared to other residents, especially friends of hers. This was not right, not fair. Plus, I didn't think in her position that she could be friends with current tenants of the community she oversees. Do these folks get special treatments? We needed to be able to function on a daily basis, but found that the stress from the situation made our lives extremely difficult. This would have only put us in a worse situation, especially when things were already bad enough with our health issues, the rising COVID cases in the winter months. It is not stated anywhere in the lease that no boxes or bags are permitted, nor how furniture should be positioned. We did not have debris. We feel as though we were supposed to live according to one person's personal preferences, and that rules are made up as time goes on. We didn't realize life here was supposed to be like Stepford Wives. Anyway, on Wednesday the heating system appeared to still not be working properly and seemed worse, making weird noises that did not sound good, and leaving off an odor which seemed similar to exhaust through the air vents and close near the machine. My wife did not feel comfortable contacting Nancy again, due to the way we were spoken to and treated. She contacted Kyle that same day about Nancy's behavior and also to report the heating issue again. He did say he would pass the information on to Nancy, and that my wife would hear back from her, but also stated that we would still have to work with her. So we were being forced to still work with the same person who just tore us apart recently. He also said he saw the pictures, and reiterated to us about getting our place cleaned up. Kyle told my wife she had waited for days before calling about the heating issue. He also told my wife she misread the email sent by Nancy, that we would have to move immediately if the furnace wasn't fixed. He said we would have to leave immediately if we didn't have the kitchen cleaned up for them to come to fix it, which really didn't make sense, and we know that's not what it said. Please note that Kyle was only going off of what Nancy told him. His demeanor was more professional than Nancy, but still cold. My wife did not wait days before reporting the issue. We wanted to give it a little time before reporting the issue to Nancy to make sure it was not something that would resolve on its own. The only one saying the issue with the heating system not working because we waited too long was Nancy. None of the maintenance men were saying that was the problem, and I think they would know better than her. How could she even know this for certain? Even if we did wait several days before reporting the issue, which we did not, it doesn't take away the landlord's responsibility to fix the heating system and pin the problems on the tenants. But I suppose that's easy to do, and one of the ways landlords in this state get away with so much. As of Thursday, we did not receive any phone calls, messages, or emails and needed to utilize space heaters. We were not sure if this was a form of retaliation from Nancy, since we went above her and asked to stop harassing us, or something from Kyle, and if he relayed the message to her, etc. But we did not feel comfortable with either of them, since it seemed like they were making it look like my wife doesn't have any idea what she's talking about, or has some kind of mental disorder and keeps being blamed for everything that transpires. My wife and I ended up hiring an attorney, as we felt we had no other options but to move out. He reassured us that we could stay until the end of our lease, and that we were able to have boxes and bags. From what he told us, the landlord was the one acting illegally, not us, yet we were the ones who needed to vacate. The lawyer sent a cease and desist letter to Nancy and her company via fax and mail. It was on Friday, now a week since my wife first called Nancy, that she emailed Kyle to let him know we still hadn't heard from Nancy, and she was also copied on the email. Monday of the following week, my wife received a response from Nancy with what appeared to be an email reply to Kyle, stating that she did not get any calls from us over the weekend. She did get other calls, and it makes me wonder if she talked to them the way she did to my wife when she had initially called. On Tuesday, Nancy came with the maintenance men, no code officer, but the first thing she asked is if we have no heat. She evidently never got her boss's message, or claimed she didn't, and actually apologized. She was like a different person compared to the other week. She didn't look around like previously. The main focus was the furnace not working, as it should have been all along. They thought they had it working before leaving, but my wife had to call her back later in the day, and she was actually pleasant to hear. They had someone come in on Wednesday and got the heating system up and running finally. I believe his name was Tony, and he had asked me if we had regular issues with the lights flickering in our residence, which I confirmed we did. About a week later, we received a letter taped to our screen door stating that our lease would not be renewed after April 30. It seemed like Nancy and her disciples were playing a dangerous game that could have affected our safety and put us in more danger in a bad situation. It was in the middle of January, still in the midst of the pandemic, at its worst numbers and during one of the weeks with the coldest temperatures. We needed to be able to stay there, at least until the end of our lease, and prevent an eviction to be on our record since we are hoping to purchase a home in the near future. We also did not want a bad record for us to be able to get another rental if needed. We felt we didn't deserve the extent of the punishment. We have not had much, if any, contact with Nancy after the heat was fixed. Since she never apologized for the way she overreacted and the way she spoke to us, we wanted as little contact as possible with her until our lease ended. There was one day when I was taking a walk during one of my afternoon breaks when Nancy came out from the office towards the mailboxes near where I was walking and just asked, "How are you doing?" I asked the same thing, and that was the extent of it. I continued on my walk. I normally walk during my work breaks. It was in mid-April when I was taking a walk and was stopped by Nancy, who asked if we had found a place to live. I said yes, and that we would be moving on 2 different dates. She asked how long we would need until, and I told her through April 30th, the last day of our lease. Nancy told me how she got a call from a place, our current residence, for a reference, and she told them that we pay our rent on time. She then asked that we call her to schedule our walkthrough inspection when we were ready. I told her I would let my wife know. Just a few minutes earlier, Nancy was near the mailboxes outside of the office. I was caught off guard the way she confronted me, as if she went out of her way to catch me on my walk to ask about our situation. We thought if she did have any questions that she would have sent an email or called, not just approached me on the street. But I guess I shouldn't have been surprised considering the way this place operates. We then made arrangements to have our lawn mowed and the weeds pulled one last time. We left a payment in an envelope attached to our back door for the business who cuts our grass as we normally would, since they were supposed to come a couple days later. However, the check was gone. My wife contacted the business owner to see if he picked up the check, and he advised that Nancy, whose grass he also cuts, actually took it and called to let him know she has it and will give it to him. She was afraid that someone might take it. My wife told him that was odd, and he agreed. Nothing was said to us. This was our money. The business did end up getting the check and completing the service, but the lack of communication is concerning. We're not sure what Nancy was doing there in person to begin with, since she knew we needed until the end of the month to finish. My wife and I had 2 moving dates before finally setting in our new place. We cleaned it to the best of our ability, and I think the end result came out well. All we needed was more time, which was not on our side months ago. As I said, a lot transpired during May to October 2021 in our lives, but landlords don't seem to care about that. We were being kicked while we were already down. After we were done cleaning our old place out, my wife left a voicemail for Nancy to advise her that we were done. We would be unable to do a walkthrough inspection, and the keys were left inside. She also informed her that any type of correspondence could be sent to an old address. As we were having our mail forwarded, we did not end up having to provide our new address, however. We received our security deposit back minus $127.20 for shampooing of the carpets. It is not outlined in the lease that this needed to be done upon leaving. We made sure the carpeting was cleaned as much as possible, but evidently not to our former place's standards. The washer and dryer hookups leaked water. This was noticed as they were initially put in, then by the person who took our washer and dryer. There's evidently a lot of issues, as we had mentioned, yet we were still paying a full month's rent for 12 months. We just kept getting screwed over. We waited until after we moved and received our security deposit before filing a complaint. We feared retaliation while still living there. Since moving to our new place, we've not had any problems. I can't believe the way we were treated, and I'm glad we're out of there, but the trauma is still at the back of our minds. My advice to anyone looking to rent is to do your homework thoroughly about the people in charge and the company itself. You might save yourself a lot of unnecessary grief in the long run. This happened back in 2022. I applied for a remote proofreading job via LinkedIn with a known company, or at least I thought it was. I was contacted via email by a gentleman named Alex to find out my availability for an interview. So I interviewed over Skype with Marlon, which was just a series of questions. I never actually talked to him. This should have been the first red flag I know. Marlon advised me several minutes after submitting my answers to the review team that I was hired. I completed a 1099 with my name and address only and signed a contract. I was then advised I needed to have a check sent to me, which I would sign and deposit into my account, then use the funds towards a workstation needed for the job and pay a vendor with it. The $3,000 check from the company showed as available in my personal checking account right away, so I relied on the bank to see that the funds were available and thought they could be used. I was asked the vendor, whose name was Kim, via text to make payments in increments equal to $3,000. 2 were made through Zelle in the amount of $500 each to an individual, then 1 through Venmo in the amount of $1,000 to another individual. I did not know either of them personally. I know what you're probably thinking. How could you be so stupid? I knew the money from the $3,000 check was not my own, but I thought I could pay the remainder of what was due to the vendor from the check and still have the existing funds that were already in my account. If I knew the funds were not yet available, I would never have made any further transaction. This was all over Labor Day weekend in 2022. I received a call from the bank the day after Labor Day advising me the check was fraudulent, and there was a hold placed on the check. In the meantime, my checking account balance had gone into the negative. I was advised by them not to communicate with any of the individuals involved and to file a police report, which I did the same day. I received an email from Alex and a text from Kim about sending the rest of the funds and the workstation to be shipped to my home address. Needless to say, I did not respond to their request, nor did I hear from them again. I kept all the correspondences and filed reports with several agencies. I am employed full-time and was in the midst of trying to earn some additional income during some hard times, particularly while COVID was still ramped. I failed to recognize the signs of a scam and was caught in a weak moment because the day of my interview was my late grandmother's birthday, so I took my new hire as a good sign. My wife and I are in a one-income household, and she is disabled, still in the process of applying for federal benefits. I was trying to do what I could to make ends meet, and this really hurt us. The whole situation still has us very upset, and makes me especially feel like a failure after all this time. I needed to reach out to 988 as the situation had been very traumatizing. I had also taken some time off from my job after it happened. I have anxiety and depression, for which I am treated, which have worsened since this event occurred. The agencies I filed the report with either did not contact me back or they were unable to help me. I followed up with the police, and they were unable to do anything further for me, just advised that I contact the Attorney General office, which I already had. I tried working with my bank, but they informed me that since the Venmo and Zelle activity was initiated and authorized by me, the dispute claims for both were denied. Evidently, there's a regulation known as Regulation E that does not provide protections for the consumers in the event of authorized payments resulting from scams. Therefore, I'm SOL. As far as I know, the Skype account, the Venmo account, and the Zelle account for all the individuals involved are still active. I do not know all the steps that the police took with this issue, what protocol was followed, or if they had just concluded this likely occurred overseas, as the officer assigned to my case mentioned. I realize this situation is not as big as many of the other issues the police encounter, but I was hoping a more thorough investigation would have been conducted. Scammers therefore continue to get away with their misdeeds. I understand that there was no unauthorized activity in my accounts, and that I initiated those payments. However, I never would have done so if I knew there were fraudsters and a part of a scam. Electronically, the funds showed up as available on my mobile app, which is misleading. If I knew they were unavailable, it would have delayed me from making any transactions until I heard back from the bank that the check was fraudulent. I paid a heavy price for it against my better judgment since I am out $2,000. I've since taken additional measures, and I'm much more cautious when applying for and researching online jobs. I was able to since find a stable and legitimate part-time position and get back on track with my life for the most part. But I'd be lying if I told you this whole issue doesn't haunt me whenever I think about it. I never had anything like this happen to me before. Nothing that at least involved money being stolen from me. You can add insult to injury, but trust me, I've heard it a lot since this happened and wish it never did. I wanted to share my story because I don't want to see what happened to me happen to anyone else.